In 2018, an anonymous post on 4chan would appear, alleging to have taken a photo of a gray alien, taken by sheer chance in fact, but now posted for the internet to see. Even 7 years later, it is still discussed on the internet as bizarrely realistic, with strangely accurate details that match up with a later reputable description. Wanting to know more, I did a deep dive, and this is what I found. This is Exploring the Paranormal, the 4chan aliens. On November 21st, 2018, someone would post the following onto X, 4chan's dedicated paranormal board. It would be this image of a gigantic gray alien, staring ominously into a car, as a photo is taken of it from within. The OP would write, "This was a picture that was taken from inside a car that I was working on. Full story was that I was working on it at about 11 p.m., and I heard a bang on the front of the car. I thought it was a raccoon, so I took a picture with flash to scare it off. But when I took a picture, I got this. Having seen this, I turned on my flashlight only to see that it had disappeared. I had matched up the picture next to the car and the wall behind it and measured how tall it would be, and it was about 8 feet. Can anybody tell me if this was a prank on me or if this was real? Honestly, I think it's real." The thread instantly blew up as other Anons rushed to ask the OP questions and speculate on the veracity of the image. Anons would reverse search for the image and discover it had only one result: OP's post on 4chan. Real or not, this photo is making its debut here and now. People were enamored by the details they saw. The being didn't just have the stereotypical pale skin and large black eyes of greys, it had visible veins at the neck, facial asymmetry, and its eyes weren't just black. The camera's flash revealed black pupils and gray irises. Some Anons posted how the visual itself was terrifying at a primal level, so one can only imagine how much more terrifying such a visual would be in person. But what was it really? Was it even real? That is what everyone began speculating on. People would run the image through Photoshop detection software, and the result? It checked out. Whatever this picture is, it wasn't photoshopped. For comparison, this is what ELA detection would show in a photoshopped image. OP was now being bombarded with questions from various Anons for more details. Was OP just trying to fool them with a quick story and vanish? Despite everything, OP kept his cool, stayed in the thread, and answered their questions. In fact, he would be incredibly cooperative. He would not post just the car, but also the model, and the area where the being was seen. One thing for sure could be established: OP was indeed the owner and originator of the photos. But this wouldn't be enough for the Anons. They became a bit more skeptical over OP's story of how the photo was taken. But he would say this in response: "I just got home from work and I had to scrape the rust off, but it got dark fast. So I used my cell phone for light, and it all happened so quick. Also, I can just work in the dark. It's like asking someone, why do they eat hamburgers with cheese? Or why you took a walk on a cold night. You don't plan every step of your life." Which is entirely fair. Sometimes we just act irrationally, and things happen to us. People will then look back at what you said happened and hold it to an unrealistic standard of hindsight. Dr. Reed from the Reed case touched on this with Art Bell.
Yes, it's really interesting how people react when they listen to a story like this, because they're listening in a calm, rational way to a man who's telling a story about not a calm, rational event. And so people tend to say, well, gee, I would have done this or I would have done that. You don't know how you're going to react in a situation like that.
People are people who do people things. And sometimes we forget, as a third-party onlooker, how human we are too. However, eventually skeptics would find good reasons to go, One Anon discovered that OP's image was not just a different size relative to his other pictures, but drastically so. The original image he posted was 198 kilobytes, whereas the other images OP posted was closer to 5 times that size. This indicated the image he posted was not the original, and it was altered somehow. And this is when OP began to add a bit to his story so as to explain the discrepancy. He had actually posted a cropped version of the image. The original was on another computer, but the hard drive was broken, so he couldn't get the file off. And also, it couldn't connect to the internet. And the phone that it was taken on originally? Well, he still had it, but it was broken, and he couldn't get the file off or post it to the internet from the phone. But to his credit, he was still cooperative with the posters. So he opted to record the phone with his other phone and uploaded both a GIF and a WebM. It's here we get the full, apparently uncropped picture of the alien. But that's where his participation ends. His last message in the thread was, "Okay, I gotta go because my family and I are going to Black Friday. Have a good night and happy Thanksgiving. Sorry I couldn't get the photo." And now, Anons are now left to speculate on OP's story. And since then, this image would continually make the rounds on ufology communities, and strangely get compared to a case that I find personally very reputable from 2023. So let's talk about it. Schizo checkpoint ahead. A tinfoil hat is required past this point, because we are going in one level deeper. In 2023, a man came forward on Reddit's r/aliens claiming he worked personally with the corpses of gray aliens. He would go into a lot of detail about their genetics, their physiology, their motivations, and answer questions in the comments with specifics. And strangely, the mods noticed that his account was shadow banned, and each and every one of his replies had to be manually approved by the moderation team of r/aliens. And then weirdly, his account would then be deleted, leaving only his posts and his replies behind. I'll make a video on this case separately because it's very interesting and there is a lot to get into, but here's why I mention it. Among the details he presented were the eyes. You see, the black eyes of the Greys are more like a biosynthetic film which operates like how you or I wear sunglasses. Underneath are actually oversized black pupils and gray irises, and the whites of an eye around it, almost like giant human eyes. Which makes sense. An incredibly large eyeball may be more susceptible to light damage, and require some layer of protection. Interestingly, we also see this in the 1992 Quebec alien corpse case, where this black sheath seemed to be peeling back, revealing a more traditional eye underneath. And we also get it here in the 4chan alien. Everything seems to be lining up for this case to be real, right? No Photoshop. The OP verifying that he took the photo, details which match other cases. Well, there is a problem. In my research, I stumbled upon a Redditor named 3spoop56, who also looked into this case, and he found a certain image from 2004 as verified by the Wayback Machine. This image you're looking at is from a profile picture of a user named Mr. Min on a website called Worth 1000. Real quick, check out this guy's signature. The sum of the intelligence on the planet remains constant, but the population, however, continues to grow. Worth 1000 was an online website that, from 2002 to 2013, hosted Photoshop and image manipulation contests around different themes. I placed Mr. Min's profile picture over the 4chan image, lining up the nostrils, and adjusted the opacity. As you can see, if you select a fine detail from the Worth 1000 image, you will see it almost 1-to-1 on the 4chan image. I'm sorry to say, this image from 4chan was a hoax. But wait, how did this guy do such a good job fooling not just 4chan, Reddit, and the internet for so long? How did he bypass Photoshop detection software? This is my theory. Something people noticed early on was that it didn't have visible arms. In fact, a lot of Anons mentioned it looked a bit like a cardboard cutout. Mr. Min's image was blurred or smoothed out to remove any wrinkles or separations of the limbs, so you would have one consistent flat image printed out and placed on a 2D flat surface. Details which are too textured or too three-dimensional would likely ruin the optical illusion. There was, physically at least, a flat photoshopped cutout of an alien outside of someone's car, which OP took a picture of and then posted on 4chan. When backed into a corner, he added to his story in a bizarre way and then left. But what can we learn from this hoax as ufologists? I mean, honestly, it would make for a cooler video if this photo was real, but I'm not in the business of just getting AdSense money. I care about this topic, and something does need to be said. Hoaxing aliens and UFOs has been a thing since the UFO craze began in the 50s. People can be chasing money or bragging rights with their friends as they tell a story of how they got in the news or went viral. We can't afford to believe in just everything. If we did, that would devalue what is actually real and worth investigating, such as the Tic Tac video recorded by Lieutenant David Fravor in 2004 and verified by the Pentagon in 2020 as genuine video taken by the military.
What we see is this white Tic Tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. He goes to lock it up, and immediately the radar can tell, it gets signals back that it's being jammed. So, and technically jamming is an act of war.
Or former intelligence officer David Grush's whistleblower claim that the government has a crash retrieval program operating without congressional oversight, which was legally filed with the Intelligence Community Inspector General, who then deemed the whistleblower claim urgent and credible, thus escalating it to Congress.
So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access. And then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP. And I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well?
You see, as ufologists, we have to be open-minded, but open-minded in both directions, which I tried to present to you as we went through this case. We are entering a new age for our species, and truth has never been more important, and that means carrying curiosity in one hand, but healthy skepticism in the other. It's not just a battle for truth, but a public relations battle to be taken seriously. For most of ufology up until only recently, aliens and UFOs have been met only with ridicule, despite this phenomenon perhaps going back thousands of years. For instance, the 1977 film Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg represented a cultural shift. And why is that? It was one of the first movies to ever treat extraterrestrial contact as something not just in the realm of a cheap B-movie, a horror movie, or a sci-fi action film, but as something to be taken seriously.
And we made this picture in the spirit of childhood and believing in things that don't make sense, that only children believe in, because it doesn't have to make sense for a child to deeply believe in something.
So the Fortune alien may be a hoax, but that's okay, because there's a lot that isn't a hoax. We have to be bold enough to beat the skeptics to the punch and say when something is or isn't real. We have to sift through the dirt to find gold, and not just declare everything we see to be valuable, because it's worth sifting for. This has been Lately. Thank you, friends. Ending transmission.